It feels like it should be a joke that I've had to give up explaining the classifications of different aquatic birds to maintain good social relationships, but it's not a joke. Maintaining a good relationship with my cousin's girlfriend was more important, so I'm told. She'll never know now. The piebilled grebe is the most widely distributed... I almost said bird. The piebilled grebe is the most widely distributed grebe in the Americas, ranging from northern Canada to southern South America. You find it in freshwater marshes, lakes, and slow-moving rivers. And you'll probably be able to recognize it not by its plumage, but by the black bar it has on its bill during breeding season and the somewhat flat head they've got. Or at least that's how I notice them. Maybe you're better than me. They are opportunistic feeders and usually dive to find their prey, which are crustaceans, frogs, small fish, other invertebrates. Those are all vertebrates. Insects and other invertebrates. They do insects too. You will rarely see them flying because they migrate at night, the bane of my existence, and they usually escape danger or things that they're scared of by diving or sinking into the water. In fact, one of the interesting defense mechanisms they have is to sink just below the surface of the water with just their eyes and nostrils sticking out like an alligator. Less threatening when it's a bird. Just saying. They are a pretty aggressive bird, especially the males, and they will often defend their territory by underwater attack, which just makes me think of Jaws, but with an aquatic bird instead. Wonder if John Williams would score that one. The nests they build are floating platforms, and both parents share the nesting duties. Despite how widespread it is for a grebe, the research is rather limited, and you basically only find accounts of them in temperate North America. Now we gotta take a quick taxonomy sidetrack, do this every episode, but this one is important to me. Grebes look like ducks, they talk like ducks, they are not ducks. I love aquatic birds, and people will often say to me when I say that, oh, you like waterfowl, yeah? And I do, but waterfowl only refers to anseriforms. And within that order, most birds are within the family Anatidae, with the exceptions of the magpie goose and the screamers. I didn't name them. I don't know who named them that. And the family Anatidae are the ducks, geese, and swans. I also love grebes, which are in the family Podicipedidae, and coots and gallinules, which are in the family Rallidae, and loons and gannets and cormorants and many other birds that live largely in water, but are not waterfowl. Okay? Okay. So the piebilled grebe is a small, rather chunky, non-waterfowl grebe, with a couple of seasonal plumage changes. Their breeding plumage, which is what most birds are known for, has dark brown upper parts, a grayish buff neck and flanks, a black throat patch with a whitish border, which is more defined in males, and a distinctive bluish-white bill with a black vertical bar around it. That's probably what you're going to notice. That makes it a piebilled grebe. Well, it doesn't make it a piebilled grebe, but you'll know it's a piebilled grebe if it's got that little line. For their non-breeding plumage, their throat is pale, their necks and flanks are a reddish-brown, and the bill turns a pale brownish buff and usually doesn't have that black bar anymore. And juveniles basically resemble non-breeding adults, except their bills are a sort of orange-red, with no black bar. The sexes basically look alike, but the males are typically bigger and have slightly more exaggerated plumage. People will say that you can get them confused with the other types of grebes, but I think grebes look fairly different. As much as I love ducks, a lot of them look exactly the same, particularly in non-breeding plumage, but the grebes I feel like you can tell apart pretty well. So they've got a complete pre-basic molt, a partial pre-alternate molt, and some feathers molt continuously. And the feathers that do molt continuously are often ingested by adults and fed to chicks. As much as I can factually know that different evolutionary niches exist for a reason and they work for the species that use them, my very human brain can't hear things like feeds their feathers to their own young and feel good about it. I really don't. When chicks hatch, they are covered in a sparse black and white striped down with these cinnamon markings all over them. And you can actually ID individual chicks by their unique down patterns, which is so cute. That's so cute. I'd get so attached. That would be a problem considering the survival rates of birds. It's always a problem. I do have this one picture from a previous outing of a couple of greblings where you can't see their plumage because they're backlit, but I do love that they look like little Loch Ness monsters. At least that's what they look like to me. There are 3 recognized subspecies, and if I can figure out which pictures are of which, I will try to put them here. But often subspecies all look the same to anyone who's not an actual ornithologist. They have a pretty big wintering range. They basically just want anywhere where the water hasn't frozen, and they've even been noted to be in the Great Salt Lake in Utah because it's non-freezing due to the salinity. And so whether they migrate at all is basically up to whether they're in the north where water's gonna freeze, or more south where it's not, which also means that the time that they migrate varies by region. They leave when the water goes. As I said, they are a nocturnal migrant. Love that. And when dawn nears, they basically just land on whatever water is nearest. And though they're not really a very social bird, they can form pretty big flocks during migration. Safety in numbers, eh? So their migration is triggered by ice formation and food scarcity. And they are actually one of the first birds to travel north again after the thaw. They are really an opportunistic feeder. They will take what's available, anything, everything. And the variation in their diets really does seem to be what they can get seasonally, wherever they are. They get their prey by diving underwater, in open water, with vegetation, wherever. And they'll occasionally catch insects on vegetation or on water, but you'll basically never get them hunting on shore. Not their style. Because they can, with their strong bill, they crush their hard-bodied prey and the crayfish, and will often break the claws off of whatever they caught that's got claws before they eat it. And with fish, they usually kill them with internal damage and then swallow them headfirst in classic pelican fashion. They swallow small prey underwater and bring the big stuff up to the surface, and they will feed their young by tearing their prey into more manageable pieces. Like your dad, cutting your steak for you, except grosser. Although they will also steal prey sometimes, even from their mates and offspring. My dad never did that. Actually, that's a lie. He does that all the time. We're all animals, eh? As I mentioned earlier, they do often swallow their feathers. It helps them form pellets to protect their intestines from sharp bones that they may have swallowed. You know, you've seen a bird pellet before. One of those. And their parents' feathers are often a chick's first meal. They've got the same kinds of calls that most birds have: a threat call, a greeting call, a pair bonding call, you know. Both sexes sing, although the female song is usually shorter and softer, and there is a braying component that has only been heard in males. And they sing year-round, but it's most frequent during the breeding season. That's the territorial or pair bonding call. Don't think I said that. Chicks will actually start vocalizing 2 to 3 days before they hatch. Love to see a peeping egg. That's so cute. And will use food begging calls for their parents for a couple of months after they hatch. But their first song or greeting call is usually not until they're almost a year old, though there's not been a lot of research on their vocal development. And their vocal activities generally depend on the season, their pair status, and the territorial occupancy. In the non-vocal sound department, during territorial disputes, they will often do loud feet splashing on top of the water, which can be audible from hundreds of meters away. Oh, I love birds. They may not be waterfowl, but they are certainly birds in the water. You don't get them on land that often because their feet are fairly far back on their body, which leads to an awkward locomotion. They don't really fly that often either, just when they gotta get somewhere. And to get up in the air, it requires a long running start on water for them. And they seem to be strong, but not very agile flowers. And they seem to be strong, but not super agile flyers, although their wing beat frequency and their flight speeds are not well documented. When they're swimming, which is where they're comfy, their feet are mainly what they use for propulsion, with their wings flapping only in panic or to make quick maneuvers. And their feet are very well adapted with lobed toes and rotational abilities to swim very effectively. They have a bunch of dives they do. They really like diving. They have a feeding dive, which is a smooth head-forward dive with zigzag underwater swimming. They have a springing dive, which is where they jump and dive, which they often do if there's rough waters. They have a gradual sinking, where they have enough control of their buoyancy to slowly sink into the water. That's just great. I don't know why I find that so great. That's just amazing. They have a crash dive, which is a forceful dive that causes a lot of splashes. They have a patter dive, which involves aggressive surface running and then diving, usually during disputes. Adults will also sometimes dive with a chick clamped under their wing. Just, here we go. Deep breaths. As I said, they are a pretty aggressive bird. And within their species, there is territorial aggression all year round, although more often in the breeding season. And defenders will dive and strike intruders from underwater. Still love that. And then they will display threat postures. And then intruders will usually flee, although physical fights are not uncommon, usually among the males. Although pairs will defend their territory together, with females noted to assist males in chases. And after these disputes, both partners in a pair may perform a triumph ceremony. They're a bird with a triumph ceremony. They will often perform a circle display, which involves high head postures, wing quivering, and turning movements during conflicts, often ending with a possible staring contest. That's how I get rid of men. And sometimes to end a conflict, a grebe will do a bluff dive, which involves ritualized slow diving and resurfacing as a form of appeasement. Appeases me. Outside of their species, it is noted that they recognize threat postures from least grebes, and it usually dominates over horned and eared grebes. And it may attack other water birds within its territory. It appears that their mating system is monogamous, at least for the season, and possibly for several seasons, although there is not a ton of study on individual birds. They don't have super elaborate courtship displays, although they do have advertising, postures, and calls. And these displays include head jerks, pirouettes, ripple dives, and the triumph ceremony, which I mentioned before, which strengthens pair bonds. As I mentioned, they're not super social, but they are more social outside the breeding season. And juveniles have displayed play behavior, including chasing fish and playing with objects. The predators for these guys include the bald eagle, peregrine falcon, great horned owl, glaucious winged gull, water moccasins, alligators, snapping turtles, the Norway rat, raccoons, and minks. For defense, they will dive, feign injury, they've got some distraction displays, and will sometimes carry their young on their backs to protect them. For nesting, they usually are found in places with dense emergent or aquatic vegetation, with nearby open water for foraging. You need that when you're raising young. The nests they have are floating nests that are usually anchored with vegetation, although they're sometimes free floating, and they typically begin building them shortly after ice out, with their first clutch laid about 4 to 10 days later, incubation lasting about 23 days, and hatching spread over 2 days to a week. And the parental care for the hatchlings lasts about 4 to 11 weeks. Within a season, a second brood is common for these guys if the first was successful. The first clutch is laid over the course of 4 to 10 days, and the nests they build can weigh up to 22 kilograms. Both sexes will work on building the nest, and it's usually made of fresh or decomposed plant matter from the bottom of the lake or body of water that they're on. And the nest size and buoyancy changes as eggs are laid and incubation starts. And the rotting plant material that the nest is typically made out of helps keep the temperature stable during incubation. Hatching usually follows the laying order of the eggs, and adults typically don't assist in the hatching, and only will remove the eggshells from the nest after they've hatched. The hatchlings are pretty mature, although still dependent on their parents, and are ready to leave the nest pretty quickly. And chicks will climb onto an adult's back within an hour of hatching to get in the water, although they still cannot feed themselves. They grow pretty fast, reaching near adult weight within 8 to 9 weeks, although they're not developed at that point, with their wings and feet really taking a bit longer to get fully adult. And by day 8 to 12, they progress to the point of being able to climb and dive and catch live prey. But it takes them around to day 35 to be able to fly. Brooding lasts about 3 weeks and occurs primarily on adults' backs, which I love. I love it so much. And both parents will feed chicks by holding prey in their bill for the chicks to snatch. A lot more data is needed on these guys for a lot of different factors, including hatchling survival, which seems to be around 60% in studied areas. What the first age of breeding is, there's no data on that for wild birds at all. And their general lifespan, although they are known to be generally long-lived, with recorded lifespans up to 13 years. Now I wanted to find a grebe. And to find one, I went to the Montezuma Wildlife Refuge. Now this is considered to be an important stopover for migratory birds, so you get a lot of good stuff here. Unfortunately, it's an hour away from me, so I don't get out too often. I usually largely go to see what ducks are passing through, because I love ducks. They have a wildlife drive that you can go through around the property, but that was closed on the day I happened to go. That's okay. I wasn't anticipating anything great there anyway. So I went to a place called Mays Point. Now, the first time I ever came to this particular spot, it was a lake. It's not a lake in September, apparently. Not surprised. But I had seen many a bird there before, and so I was looking for grebes. They have a little observation platform that I sat on for a while, trying to get things to come by me as opposed to me trying to have to go by them. I'm bad at that. I decided to walk pretty quickly again, and I found some guys. And they were still enough for me, which is rare, that I was able to pull out my video camera and take a little shot of these guys. Big stretch. And these guys do appear to be juveniles, at least to my not particularly educated eye. Now, I was very happy with these guys. I wanted a better picture of grebes. I only had the backlit ones, and they delivered. Thank you. I did walk around some more after I found these guys. I was always going to. I had driven an hour. I was going to walk around. In Montezuma, they have several observation towers, and I went up one. It was a beautiful day. And way out in the distance, I got a northern harrier. Can't say that the picture's very good, but it's still nice to see. And a lot of blackbirds, and some sort of sparrow that I don't remember what it is, and I'd have to check the picture. You could also see that my focus was much more on the birds than my camera until I heard a big noise. Be careful with your camera equipment. So those were my older greblings. I certainly enjoyed them. Hope you enjoyed them. If you didn't, who are you? Remember, I'm not trained in this. I don't know anything about birds except the stuff I know about birds. I'm really just somebody who enjoys doing this. And I hope you do too. Get outside, please.